So, you know, this is kind of the conventional solution, and we do play in that arena a little bit. What really separates us from the rest of the pack, for the most part, is our decentralized approach. So with our decentralized products, we really have two different families. You can see here we have a number of options. And again, I'm going to go through these in more detail. This is just kind of setting that up. So we have a number of devices that basically are designed to capture trash, debris, and some TSS. And then we have our cartridges, and that will be kind of the second half of the presentation. So with the cartridges, you can get to a much higher level of water quality treatment, and that's where you can start looking at some of those specialized applications. So again, with all of these, whether it's kind of a low end, let's just strain it, or, you know, keep the debris, you know, out of the pipe system, or you're using the cartridges, either way, you're going to be able to treat the runoff close to the source. These will fit into retrofit applications, and very often, again, provide pre-treatment for some other type of BMP. The fact that they are decentralized and capture that runoff close to the source essentially means that they are a low impact development, you know, green infrastructure component. So I'm just going to start with the products now and just kind of run through these, again, from kind of least complicated to most complicated. It's not completely linear, so bear with me. But this is a picture of a connector pipe screen. It's basically just a front of pipe solution. This particular item is designed for a specific TMDL in California for trash. You know, the threshold is they want to capture everything down to the size of a cigarette butt. So that's why it's perforated stainless with that small hole. We can, you know, and that's something we do use, perforated stainless steel. We also can work with expanded stainless steel. So if the threshold of the pollutants you're looking to capture is larger than a cigarette butt, like Coke bottles and sandwich wrappers, you know, generally the same device can be made for less money. So these are compact and affordable. Pretty much they all fold up and ship flat. This goes in the basin, so the basin can still be utilized, the catch basin, for the storage of the debris. It is a front of pipe solution. Basically will keep the debris out of the pipe or the drainage system. We can provide this bypass. Sometimes people get a little scared looking at the size of that. In these inlets, per the California spec, that bypass is at the 100-year storm level, which at one time was pretty significant. Now it seems like we get a 100-year storm, right, every few weeks or so, depending on where you're at. So we can always fill in those bypasses with that expanded stainless and capture some larger material, reduce larger material getting, you know, through the bypass itself. And a lot of people use these really just to reduce downpipe maintenance, so they don't have to go fish trash and debris out of the drainage system. And these are pretty slick. They have 3 piano hinges on them, so they can fit into the corner or a flat or rounded wall for that matter. So pretty simplistic. And I'm going to go right to the next one. This is a different version of a pipe screen, and just kind of point out what Fabco brings to the table. Right, that first unit, pretty simplistic and basic. This one, rather than use 5 of those other units, the contractor wanted to use one screen in front of the 42-inch pipe inside of the junction structure, which was already in the ground and only had a 22-inch manhole cover access. So our solution was to just hinge it. So you'll see we have these same 5 or 6 little tricks that we use across a number of different products. We will supply a DWG PDF for whatever product that we're supplying. You can see here the basic concept of the single pipe screen. And you know, all of the drawings that we supply will provide the performance data. So it changes product to product, but in this case, you've got the filtered flow rate, the particle retention size. In this particular inlet, the bypass was actually part of the concrete structure, so there's no bypass in our unit itself. but there's also the note that it has to get through the 22-inch diameter manhole. So we basically just fold it up, put it through the manhole, unfold it, and the contractor can attach it to the wall. So those are a couple pretty basic introductory products. We make trench drain filters, which seems to be a growing field. We've sold more trench drain filters in 2019 than we had, and Fabco had sold collectively in its existence until 2019. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. This is a 4-foot unit. So really, regardless of the length of the trench itself, you put one 4-foot unit at the end. We put a couple of oil booms in it. They come in different dimensions, obviously, right? So this is a 4-inch width that goes up to about a 20, or the 6-inch width goes up to about a 26-inch width. And we're starting to see more trenches that actually drain from the bottom as opposed to the end. So we can do this double-sided approach. And we're starting to actually see trenches really grow a lot. And with underground detention, we've seen a lot of, it's kind of a new thing we're seeing, at least on the east, of using the trench drain and then feeding the underground storage through the trench drain, with this being pre-treatment, so that you know, there's less likelihood of any kind of clogging at the interface of the infiltration interface boundary at the bottom of the storage. So that was pretty quick. And you know, we can customize for pre-made trenches, that type of thing. Really just trying to get this quick overview through this quick overview. We had some success with New York City DEP recently with these screen baskets, essentially. But it's really kind of more the story, and this is what we could offer through ASP and everyone involved there. And, you know, FaceTime, Zoom, we can get our, you know, lay eyes on jobs in the field. So just quickly, this is the story. This is a standard New York City inlet, at least in Queens. So they have this little curb throat here. The runoff comes through the curb throat and basically goes into a stone-filled pit that surrounds this little inlet, and they had some significant clogging problems. So now this site was close enough. We actually got in the field, but could have done it remotely as well. Took a look at what the problem was, showed up a week later, and you know, this is basically the solution we came up with. So the water comes through that same curb throat, and now we have a filter basket that will capture the debris and not clog up the entrance into or the actual interior of the stone-filled pit that is surrounding the system. So right now, there's literally hundreds of these being installed in Queens right now by New York City. You notice we cut the Fabco name into the demo basket we brought. They also had some issues with threaded pipe covers, some with screens, some without, and we just kind of took it upon ourselves to invent these little caps for them, which when we came back to show them the baskets, we showed them that we brought these as well. They were very impressed. We went above and beyond. They didn't really ask us to do this, but they've incorporated this. So every time we sell a basket, you know, we're providing these couple of solutions as well. And you know, we have this ability to cut. You know, we cut our logo into our stuff, but New York City DEP felt that if we cut New York City DEP, NYC DEP into every unit, there'd be less likelihood of vandalism, people actually stealing this stuff, because it would be harder to resell it. So you never know what the determining factor in any given sale might be. Hopefully you're kind of catching on to my quick overview. You know, I'm just going to shoot through these slides. So the next thing we'll show is the beehive overflow filter or bypass filter. Basically, you know, we have a kit essentially that fits into the bypass structure underneath the beehive grate. So it consists of a geotextile bag, a frame, and a ring that holds that together, and then an expanding aluminum ring in the 12 to 30 inch. And there's a few different, I think there's a few different, right? 12, 18, 24, and 30 inch diameters. So if you're doing traditional rain gardens or biocells, right? However you might want to refer to them. If you're looking at focal point as a potential solution through ASP, you're going to have a bypass in your rain garden. And this concept, and I really kind of got started with this with Philadelphia Water Department, and their desire to have as much maintenance available to do by hand at the surface. That's what they want. They want to be able to send their crew of guys out to the sites and let them do the maintenance by hand and as close to the surface as possible. So it's pretty simplistic product, really. There's the ring. You just turn that device and it will tighten the ring up inside the structure. Then you can drop the bag in, and that's basically it. Then put the grate on top.
It's so easy. I can do it. I love these things, Warren.
Yeah, this is a large volume. It's becoming a very large volume item for us. And when people started kind of seeing the PVC structure with the hanging basket, we started getting more and more questions about, well, I've got this flow coming into my underground storage. I want to make sure that this interface stays clean. Can we do these baskets to protect underground storage? And of course, the answer is yes. Again, different contractors, distributors have different, twists on what they need. So here's a site down south. You can see some of the boxes they're using, the R tanks on the site. Here, this is a perforated metal screen, basically. Got a couple handles on it so they can drop some straps or chains with hooks and just lift that up, dump it out, rinse it out and put it back in. So this is to capture debris, basically pre-treatment for the interface of the drainage pipe into the underground storage system. And again, this would, here's the drawing. There's those performance characteristics of the capacity of the unit, the filtered flow, and the bypass flow. In many of these decentralized applications, our approach is kind of a first flush approach. So we're going to give you the filter rate. That's essentially, the intent there is to clean the first flush, and then we're going to make sure that the bypass has enough, open space to not create a backup, in the drainage area. So those things can be manipulated depending on, the storm and what your design requires. Keep in mind that any place you see a hanging bag, for the most part, a cartridge filter, we haven't talked about those yet, can be substituted. And there's a lot of small variations on the theme there. But if you're doing underground detention, we can provide a few different options that are designed specifically to pre-treat that water going into your storage. Then we get into post-construction inlet protection. One size does not fit all. Fabco products are configured for most types of catch basins and applications. We design it for as much flexibility in the field as we can, and you'll see some examples of that. As Bill mentioned, we're on Long Island. We really started out as a Northeast kind of supply company. So our units are built to withstand physical stresses and harsh climate conditions. For the most part, probably 80% of what Fabco sells does go into some type of inlet, and probably 75% of that, if not more, is going into either what we call a flat grade or drop inlet, just a square or rectangular inlet with a flat grade on top. Combination inlet, whether it's precast concrete or cast like this, that's really the biggest family of work we do with the inlet filters. The open curb inlet is a little bit of a different story, and we'll cover that as well. But for now, we're going to look at the solutions for the two inlets on the left. This is a standard drawing for a StormSACK Plus, just to kind of reinforce, that we will be able to provide this type of information. Keep in mind, if you're doing a retrofit job, we go out, survey the inlet, and make a drawing for the unit that will fit in there. If it's new construction, you may put one of these on your plans, but it's kind of a placeholder until those inlets are built in the field. it's hard to say, exactly if the unit will fit in. I want to reinforce again that the performance characteristics will be on the drawings. So these drawings very much, or very often, are the bulk of the submittal package that the contractor might use. So we're going to let you know how much debris the unit will hold, what's the filtered flow rate, what's the primary bypass rate. Some of our units have a secondary bypass at a higher level. So there's the total bypass rate. And then there is an optional oil boom. So it will tell you how much oil that boom will collect. Again, this is a different series of drawings that we have, same products. It just shows how they fit into the inlets. And again, if the inside of that inlet is that clean, everything is very simple to do. But very often that's not the case, and there might be some pipe protrusions or ladder rungs or a ledge because the cap is kind of offset from the riser box. So I'm not going to get into detail here. I'll just say that between Fabco and ASP, we will support the contractor in getting these real world surveys done, and then we'll manufacture the product off the survey, and we get very little units that we ship are problematic in terms of fitting in the inlet. 1 of 100, if that is problematic. So we're really good about that. And part of that has to do with the flexibility, which I'll show you in a minute. So we're going to start with our geotextile based water StormSACks. We have kind of 2 grades of StormSACK. One is the BMP. It says PWD as well. I'm going to try to get through that story very quickly, and then the StormSACK Plus. If you have any kind of historic perspective with Fabco, we used to just have the StormSACK heavy duty product that we're showing here at the bottom. That is now the StormSACK Plus, essentially, and we've introduced this kind of lower grade unit. So this is a StormSACK BMP. The reason that we mentioned PWD as well, they kind of were developed simultaneously. We were rolling out this BMP model, which is it's a different type of frame. It's an aluminum frame that we're able to cut on our plasma table. It gives us a lot of additional flexibility in terms of how quickly and how cost effectively we can make these units. Really the story did kind of, the first place we took it was PWD, which was a pretty big, Philadelphia Water Department, was a pretty big opportunity for us. This is the first inlet that they took us to. So PWD had issues. I'm not going to read all the details, but basically they had issues with their hand maintenance crews being able to do maintenance efficiently with really some of these inlets had at least 2, if not 3 different products in them trying to provide pre-treatment. So we did a survey, and we came back a week later with this prototype unit, which you can see is a relatively deep basket and a 4-inch deep tray, essentially. So you may recall, right, the type P unit had this curb throat. That was really the only access into the inlet besides the manhole cover. So we were able to use our Fabco technology. We've got some phenomenal engineers and fabricators. We were basically able to put that pan together in a way that it would fold up flat, right? That's what we showed. The first one showed up, it'll fold up flat. And even with the repaving, right? And when these things get down to 1 3/4 clearance, our pan will still fit through the curb throat. So once it's inside the unit, they unfold it, put it together, install it, and then the basket fits right into the tray. So this is what it looks like from the manhole cover after the install. This is a good example of the uniqueness and specific support we can provide to any client out there. PWD has hundreds of these type P units. So that is now the standard in Pennsylvania. In the city of Philadelphia, every P inlet is going to take one of these Fabco type units. After we did that, they came back to us and said, well, we have a type M and we have a type C and we have a 6-foot, right, type C with the curved throat. And they have a 6-foot dual unit, which is essentially a precast 2x6 inlet that has a weir inside it. So we're providing pre-treatment for the one side that the water comes into. So essentially that interaction with PWD led them to incorporating, 4 new standards. So every type M, C, P, or 6-foot dual unit in the city is going to take one of these inlets when they're doing a green infrastructure type of application. So we got a lot of experience kind of dealing with this new type of frame, and anything outside of Philadelphia Water Department, so the rest of the country, it's basically the BMP is what we would call it. And there's really 2 distinctive features I want to point out here. One is that the frame on this, right, uses a separate flange. So the frame is the flat part here, and the flange is what connects to it. You've got a 1-inch plus or minus adjustability on all 4 sides. So that can really simplify things in the field. That little bit of, 1 inch plus or minus means a lot. And anyone who's worked with a product that had no flexibility, could probably understand what I'm talking about. The other thing about these units is that they're really designed for hand maintenance. And, how the maintenance will be conducted, I think, is something that has been overlooked very often when there's the initial consideration of what's the best solution for us. So in terms of hand labor, right, these units are designed to be lifted out of the inlet and maintained by hand. So you can see here's the hanging bag. There's these loops that the rod go through that holds the bag onto the unit. But there's longer loops as well, and those longer loops are right connected directly to the bag. So when you lift, and whether it's 2x4 or even a smaller round, this is the PWD type P unit, but even if it's a 24-inch beehive filter, essentially when you lift by these straps here, these longer straps, you're pulling the bag up, and all of the weight of that bag is supported directly by those loops. You're not lifting the weight of the bag, and those bags, when they get full with wet debris, it can be pretty heavy. We've seen a lot of problems, and really we've gotten a lot of orders where other units, the frame itself is what took the weight when they did the maintenance, and they ended up getting bent and skewed. This product or this system really is meant for hand maintenance and will not put that stress on the frame itself. So it's a good solution. Those are the basics of the BMP model. We can do a lot of different things with it. This is an MS4 opportunity. You can see, right, we did the survey first, and then we designed the product to fit into the inlet based on the in-field survey. There's the unit fitting in with the grate on top. Another survey, different size unit, different size device. Same basic concept, a geotextile bag with the BMP frame. There it is in place. So this is a township with 80 inlets in it, and they put some type of Fabco BMP device in 40 of the 80 inlets, and that is their total MS4 program. So we back to maintenance. This is their crew. Again, they've got guys that are there to do the maintenance. They don't have a vac truck, so they'll get out to the site with the tarp, empty the unit out to the tarp. They can take what's on the tarp back to the yard, let it dry out, weigh it, and then they put that weight into their compliance report, and that's how many pounds of sediment they're able to keep out of the receiving water body. In this particular case, these 2 inlets here were in front of the township building. This was the evaluation, and they were very impressed with essentially how clean the the inlets were when they went to do the maintenance. So if you're doing maintenance by hand, that's a phenomenal thing, a phenomenal product solution. If you're going to use a vac truck, right, the unlined bag is going to be problematic. So the StormSACK Plus has a few different features, right, that differentiate it from that BMP model. One is our patented aluminum flange, the dovetail connection. So with that connection, you can basically, you know, you have 5 inches of adjustability on all 4 sides.
That is huge. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that is huge. Everything you've been saying is awesome, but I absolutely dig that.
Yeah, this allows, you know, the user to basically move the body, right? There's 2 aspects of getting these to fit in the inlets. One is our frame to fit onto the grate frame, and the other is the body of the unit to fit inside the clear space of the inlet. So with this flange, you can move that body of the unit around. You know, you can have a 4-inch ledge on one side, don't need a custom unit. You can just move the body by adjusting the flange. We always recommend, if again, you know, the maintenance is really going to be the first thing to look at. Besides the adjustability on the frame, we have a high flow geotextile bag. These are available with an oil boom, and you can see the line bag, right? That's a black safety fence essentially. So when they take the back hose and start poking it down into the unit itself, the line bag will protect the geotextile from physical stresses. And it's a little hard to tell, right? But there's a bypass. So the bag is hanging off this frame, and this interior wall here of the frame where the oil boom is connected basically protects the bypass. So even if the unit fills completely with debris, there's always going to be some place for the water to get out of the unit. And then we'll have another bypass higher up on the frame as well. So, you know, not only do we want to provide the proper performance in the inlet, but we're always very conscientious of not creating a flood in the roadway, the parking, wherever that inlet is sitting. So we're always going to build in, you know, significant bypass volume. So here's some small, or just a few examples. I'd like to point out, this is a 2x4 inlet retrofit. They didn't have any frame on the 2 sides. We mounted this. This is how strong that frame is. You can really support the 2-foot by 4-foot inlet device with just 2 frames, right? And just 2 ends with the flange connected to the frame. So it's just the 2 short 24-inch sides that are supporting that unit. So that's the StormSACK Plus. And moving right along, I think we're doing okay. Just to mention, we see a lot less round structures. They're relatively rare, but we do essentially have the same model of features and benefits as, you know, for round inlets in terms of a StormSACK BMP model and a StormSACK Plus model. So everything else pretty much remains the same. They're round, a little trickier surveying the round inlets because there is no adjustability on the round units. So the other solution we provide, you know, short of the cartridges, is a screen box, a filter box. You can see here it's aluminum with the screening on it. This is the piece that fits inside to cover the bypass. So it would have a protected bypass. And then when you have the oil boom application, again, that flexibility of the frame leaves a little bit of an opening in each corner. So it comes with 4 corner fillers. Once everything's in place, those just fit right in with some double-sided tape so that the water can't circumvent the drain, obviously. So these are also made with the BMP frame. So you get that 1 inch of adjustability on all 4 sides, just another version of it. We'd like to point out that occasionally we get some very strangely configured inlets. It can be difficult with these flanges to bridge over significant ledges or other protrusions. So the BMP frame really allows us to kind of cut the dimensions that we need So even though the hole in the inlet can be relatively small, if there's a big obstruction area or ledges or whatever, we can just bridge right over that. There is no adjustability, but generally there's a little extra room to play with if there's that big of a discrepancy between the open space and the body of the unit that we're putting in there. So the other thing, let me go back to this one last thing. The other real world consideration, and again, with maintenance, this is kind of the best of both worlds. If you take a vac truck to this, it's kind of indestructible, right? That's why people like the screen box. It is, more stout and will resist more physical stresses. On a 2x4, it's relatively easy to maintain these with a flat shovel and a broom of some type, or a rake or something like that. So if you're not sure how the maintenance is going, this will work either way. The other thing I want to mention, and it doesn't come up all that often, but it can be a big factor. If the unit is being installed like in front of a bar, a heavy retail area, a lot of foot traffic, depending on where you're at, apparently flicking lit cigarette butts is still a thing that a lot of people do. And, none of the geotextile bags will really stand up to those lit cigarette butts, where here, this unit will. So that could be another consideration depending on where your application is going to sit. So now we take kind of the big step. Those are all, either screens or geotextiles, basically filtering out pollutants. When you step up to the Fabco filter cartridge, it takes you to a whole nother level of water quality. All our cartridges, have some similarities. One of them being that it's a two-stage device. So the first stage does some initial screening of the coarse sediments, trash, right, debris, and it will, we're not really saying it will trap or remove bacteria from the runoff in the top half of this. What we are saying is that the foam that is in the top half is the FabGuard. We'll talk a little bit more about it in a minute. And basically that foam will prevent bacteria from growing in the cartridge itself. So when these cartridges are sitting in the inlet over the summer, they're wet, it's hot, they will not be a source of bacteria growing in the inlet, which some of the other types of applications, can create that. The second half the bottom half of our cartridge can be filled with a number of different things. We have 5 proprietary media. So the FabGuard is our media that is recognized to kill bacteria. We have FabMax for hydrocarbons, FabZorb for oils and grease, hydrocarbon-based compounds, FabLite for heavy metals and toxic chemicals, and FabFos essentially for the nutrient targeting. So those different proprietary media provide, a different targeted cartridge. Again, most of our material, most of the real units we sell are our standard unit that kind of has a little bit of everything, but generally, a TSS, phosphorus, nitrogen rating ultimately. It's hard to get into the different approvals. I will say this: I'm here to help anyone with ASP or their clients, work through any type of regulatory issues or maze or approvals, whatever might come up. So
and just to chime in there with you, Warren, you asked before this presentation if you should say ASP, Quick Supply, Bowman Construction Supply, and Cascade Geo every time, and we agreed that that's really not practical. So for folks on here, when Warren says ASP, he means all of us, and I work for all of us. And Warren, I'm looking forward to having Warren help any of you with your projects or any questions you have. Thanks, Warren. You're doing great on time.
Yeah, I was thinking like as pickback. But it didn't really,
yeah, I tried to come up with something like that too.
Tongue, so
maybe we'll come up with something offline.
Yeah, I want to go back and just reinforce that this cartridge, right? That's the Fabco cartridge. That's like the engine that drives the water quality treatment. And basically that engine will fit in a number of different chassis. So there's a number of different ways to implement the cartridge. So the cartridge does the work, but you have to kind of configure it someplace where it can do that work. So a storm pod is just a structure that takes, right, the cartridge will fit in it and snap tight. So if you have a round structure, even if that round structure, adapts to a square frame, starting at 21 inches, you can fit, we can make a device that will fit in there and provide, filtered flow, through the bypass. So that's pretty basic. The by far kind of our bread and butter product, whatever, our big seller is the StormBasin, which is a PVC basin that generally will take 2 cartridges. We'll show you a couple of quick pictures on that. So, keep in mind for retrofit, the basins, right, the catch basins are already in existence generally. So it's always cheaper to just put your water quality treatment into the existing catch basin than to use a centralized concrete vault. On new construction, right, you still need the inlets themselves to collect the storm water. So if you can get your water quality treatment in the inlets, you can save the cost of the centralized device. Most specifically, save the cost of the concrete associated, the concrete device, and just kind of, cut up the actual treatment into the individual inlets. Generally speaking, this approach is no more than 50% of the cost per cubic foot of treatment than a centralized device. That's a general term. We can work through any specific designs. So the cartridges are pretty easy to replace. Generally, they're going to clean these units out every 6 months and replace the cartridges once a year. That's a general approach. And again, these can be targeted for specific pollutants. So if there's somebody at the, with a jar at the other end of the discharge pipe from this inlet looking for heavy metals, we can help, or whatever they might be looking for. So again, this is the same plus frame as the StormSACK Plus. So you've got the 5 inches of adjustability. It does have the protected bypass, only instead of hanging the bag, the bypass. So you can see here, that's the frame, at the inside of the frame, and this is the bypass. So the bypass of the unit is protected behind this wall right here. Pennsylvania, I live in a very easy to deal with world. There's type M and type C inlets. There's basically rectangular inlets and combination inlets. So we have, a solution for each. Outside of my local area, there's any number of variations on the theme. We can help with virtually any configuration that you might be dealing with. Depending on the specifics, sometimes a flat frame can help out tremendously. These drop flanges will always be utilized if the grate itself has ribs on it. So it can be a little trickier than you might think, getting some of these units to fit in the inlets. Sometimes that PVC body just won't work, especially in customized applications. So we can make aluminum alloy bodies or basins as well. A couple benefits to that. One is we can kind of make anything, any size, any dimension. The other is, even on a standard 2x4, we can generally fit a third cartridge in a 2x4 inlet. So again, my local area, they limit the drainage areas to any given inlet. So before you'd see a higher flow rate, you'd see a tandem, side-by-side inlet. But in some cases, you may want more treatment in the inlet, so we can do it with this. This is a drawing of a custom unit we did not that long ago. You can see it's kind of unusual design there. This was a 2x6 inlet retrofit. On one end, the township wanted to keep this steel trap in place and still functioning. So essentially, we were able to design this to fit around that steel trap and still fit 4 cartridges in the balance of the 2x6 inlet. You know, obviously could have fit 5 cartridges in this 2x6 if the trap wasn't there. And then there's the grates back on top. So if you kind of, no matter what you have there, and you know, I can't say I've seen it all, but I've seen wooden inlets, brick inlets, cinder block inlets. You know, hard to really figure out what they made that thing out of. But if it's got a grate sitting on it, generally we'll be able to put a water quality insert that will work with the structure. The third inlet, and I'll go through this quickly, is the open curb inlet. In some ways, this actually simplifies things for us a little bit, because what we'll do is install these rails inside of the structure and then just mount our device inside. That could be a basket or a cartridge system. So a nice thing about this is we can ship these rails kind of oversized, and they can be cut, you know, in the field once the cleats are installed that they're going to fit into. So that takes some of the critical measuring out of the equation. We have a very specific support flange for the units that are applied like this. Generally, you know, we're going to make the basket to fit through the manhole cover, wherever it might be. And this is the finished application. So you've got the wall cleats, the rail across here. Here's the body of the StormBasin. That support flange that lets it sit on these rails, the flow collector assembly here, and then you really can't see the daylight, but that's the daylight at the top. So the water comes through the curb throat into the unit, and there is the protected bypass here. And then obviously in a real you know, gully washer, the whole thing would just kind of overflow into the inlet. There's the completed install. So I'm going to machine gun through these next few slides. These are just different options.
We're getting towards the end. You're doing great. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm going to keep it going here. So a cartridge filter box is essentially an aluminum box that we can put the filter inside, you know, on its side. So even if you just have a 2x4 inlet, you can actually turn that into the water quality structure. If you need more than one cartridge, we can increase the number of cartridges. Right, flat walls, round structures, multiple cartridges. There's a lot of flexibility depending on what the client needs to get these cartridge filter boxes to provide a solution. This is a downspout filter, so again, you can put 2 to 3 cartridges in them. We can make it to any size, really. These will go outdoors or indoors, and basically the downspout gets connected. You provide some pre-treatment here, goes through the cartridge filter, the bypass, and then the discharge. So that's an above grade downspout filter. We also have a below grade version. So we're going to be able to size these for whatever flow rate and bypass rates you need. And then we have the full concrete vault. So we can make a concrete vault with our cartridges. Generally speaking, our flow rates are pretty high compared to some of the competition. So even though our internals might kind of be the same price, generally speaking, we can hit the same flow rate and bypass rate in a smaller concrete structure and provide some real value in that way. So I got a couple minutes left. I want to go into a little bit more detail on FabGuard. Bill, you can interrupt me at any time here once I get past these next couple of slides. So this is FabGuard. This is an example, right? This foam is the FabGuard. Most of our media is foam based. So we take different types of foam and essentially dip it in a proprietary mix that we have made for us. And then that foam will take on the characteristics of the liquid that it was dipped in. So this bacteria filter, a FabGuard, basically, and I'm not going to try to explain everything on these slides, but just to make it very simply, right, it creates, right, on the surface, and there's a lot of surface strands inside the foam, right, this chemical reaction creates what are electrically charged stiff fibers. That's as deep as I'm going technically on this. When the bacteria molecules come in contact with these stiff electrically charged fibers, it just blows it up, right? There's no poisoning, there's no adding additional poison, there's no residual poison left over. It doesn't last, it doesn't, there's a lot of issues. I'm going to go up one slide here. Keep in mind to advertise something that, to say that we can kill bacteria, essentially you have to be a federally registered pesticide to even say that in your ad or your literature. So FabGuard does have the EPA nationwide certification. Right. I started talking, I'm not going into detail, but this killing zone and dissipation of the poison itself that is the alternative to FabGuard can be very problematic. So I'm not going to get into all the details, but there's a number of line items associated with traditional bacteria treatment in the field that the FabGuard will alleviate. Some states require their own certification, and if your state requires that certification and you don't have it, we will work with you to push it through the system. We've got all the research done. So this is the Helix filter. It's the FabGuard foam configured into a Helix type of arrangement, right? So what that allows you to do is basically treat a large volume of water through this bacteria filter. Generally speaking, there's going to be some pre-treatment before the Helix filter. You don't want to fill up the Helix with a bunch of trash and debris. You really want to screen all that out and just let the bacteria-laden water get through the Helix. So
I love this thing. I wish we had 20 more minutes. I absolutely love this, but I got to wrap it up by 1. So I was going to go over our project that you did for us at a meat producing plant in Missouri, and it was awesome, and it took out E. coli off of the runoff from the parking lot. But folks, we put together this webinar series. I'm going to take over here real quick, Warren. Sorry to just jump in.
Yeah, thank you, Bill.
You bet. And everybody give a little golf clap or finger snaps in your office for Warren. I'm going to take over the clicking, and I'm just going to go ahead and move through these real quickly, because this is stuff that really catches my attention when I share a booth or I visit with Bill Reitzig or Warren Cohn at the conferences we used to do in person. And now that we're having to do everything online, I really regret I didn't have more time, because the StormFlume filter and so many other features that they have that are awesome will help with your projects. What we need you to do is know that we're going to capture this web presentation online. We recorded this as a video. We're going to post that and make it available through our social media and our website. And Warren's readily available to do this, only not in webinar form, but in meeting form. So we can use Zoom meeting or any of the other platforms that your company likes. And Warren and I can join you. I'm a civil engineer by trade, and I've helped a lot of you with engineering projects. And as Warren was saying, ASP per my instructions, you know that I represent all of these companies, and we're all readily available to set up a meeting with you, with Warren. I talked too long at the beginning. It's 1:30 now. I'm gonna have to end it. But for those of you that have been with us before, look for an email from us. Please fill out that Survey Monkey so we can get your PDH certificate to you. Ask any questions you have, and we'll answer those when we give you the PDH certificate. Warren, thanks. Any last parting comments before I hit end?
I just appreciate everybody's perceived interest and participation.
That's awesome. Thanks, Warren.